Hello everyone, and welcome back to another video in .NET MAUI tips and tricks series. In today's video, we are going to see how we can hide and protect sensitive data in our mobile application from prying eyes. There are two issues or problems that we will try to resolve over here. To demonstrate this, I have created this beautiful looking banking application which you can see on the screen. It is running on both iOS as well as Android emulators. So you can see that I have a huge balance of $87,500, which is by no means my real balance, but just for demonstration purposes. And I have spent around $12,800 this month across different expenses. So let me demonstrate a problem to you. So problem number one, let us say I am sitting in a public place and I leave my mobile unlocked on a table and I step away for a few seconds or few minutes. Now similarly, what if I am in a Teams call? Let me just demonstrate over here in Android first. So let us say I'm in a Teams call and maybe I need to share my screen, and I'm sharing my screen in the Teams call and I need to go to a particular application to show. So the moment I go to my task manager or the Windows Manager, even on iOS, you can see it is going to show this with the actual image. It is going to show you what is there in the current application at the moment. Now, this might be a bit embarrassing. What if you have a small balance or you have a significantly high balance and you do not want anyone to see? So this is the first problem that we want to tackle. So ideally what should happen is the moment we go to the task manager, this information should be hidden. No one should be able to see this. Same over Android. When we go over here, this information should be hidden from the users. This is problem number one. So let us try to see how we can fix this. So let's get back to Visual Studio for now. And I have prepared this bank application. It's a very simple application. All I have is a main page where I have created this beautiful bank screen with the help of an image. I admit I have cheated. I did not want to create the whole screen over here. So I have just pasted an image. I am displaying that image on the screen. Other than that, the only other thing I have done is, since I'm not a huge fan of application shell, so I have gone to the app.xaml, and instead of going to the app shell, I'm going directly or navigating directly to main page, the one that we just saw. That's it. And additionally, I have created two pages, one called not authorized page, which is a simple page. It is simply displaying a label saying I am not showing you my balance. And then another page called need authorization page or need authentication page, where I'm displaying a simple message saying that we need to authenticate you first. This is something which is related to the second problem, which I will come to. So let's start with our MAUI program. So this is the MAUI program. Strangely, Visual Studio is behaving very oddly today. All right. So this is a plain vanilla application. So what we are going to do, we are going to configure some lifecycle events to hide this information whenever the application goes in the background or it is not visible on the screen. We need to hide this information. So for this, we are going to tap into lifecycle events. There are two ways you can do this. Either you can go to the platforms folder. In Android, you can write this code in your main activity, or in iOS, you can write it in the app delegate. It's totally up to you. For me, I find it more convenient to put everything in mauiprogram.cs file, because that is where I can see everything in place. So to start with, what we are going to do, we are going to bring in the namespace, which is microsoft.maui.lifecycles. So let me bring it over here. And then we are going to configure the lifecycle events. So after our add fonts or configure fonts, I can go and I can say configure lifecycle events, And this is where I'm going to configure some events, both for Android as well as for iOS. Let me start with Android first because Android is a bit simpler. So let me bring in another namespace. I'm going to use conditional compilation to say if I'm running it on Android, then bring in using android.views. And once I have done that, I'm going to bring in, again using conditional compilation, I'm going to bring in a lifecycle event saying if I'm running on Android, then what happens is I need to add two events on Android. One, the first event is on pause. Let me just scroll a bit. So first event is on pause. On pause is whenever the application is paused or goes into the background, then this is the code that I'm going to run. And the second event is on resume. Whenever the application resumes or comes to the foreground, this is the code that I need to run. So on pausing the application, an Android application, all I'm doing is I'm saying on my current activity .window .set flags, I'm sending Windows Manager flags .secure. As per the definition, you need to pass this flag 2 times. So all this is doing, the moment the application goes into the background, it is going to go to the active window and it is going to set the flag to secure, which means it is going to hide this information. And when we resume the application, I'm going to clear the same flag. So I'm just saying activity.window clear flags secure Windows Manager flag. So I'm just clearing this flag. This is all we are doing. That's all we need to do for Android. Now let me just run this application and show it to you in action. So here we go, our application is launching now. Now let me do something. Let me go back to the home and let me go to the task manager again. You see over here, now the whole application screen, which was earlier visible, my bank balance, that has now disappeared. It is showing as white screen. So this is one way you can protect your information. So whenever you go to the task manager, you will not be able to see the information, which is the right thing to do whenever we have some sensitive information on the screen. This is for Android. Now let me do the same thing for iOS. For iOS, we are going to do exactly the same thing. We are going to use conditional compilation. So for this, let me bring in the namespace, which is UIKit. So I'm saying if it is running on iOS, then I'm going to use UIKit. And the code for this is little bit more involved. By the way, in Android, there was only, or at least to the best of my knowledge, there is only one option which we can see over here, which we set, which hides the information by just displaying a white screen. On iOS, fortunately, we have many more options. There are 3 at least which I am aware of. One is the very similar way where we can just display a blank screen in any color. That is option number 1, similar to what we are seeing here in Android. Option number 2 is instead of a blank screen, we can show a static image or let's say your application logo. That is option number 2. And the option number 3, which I prefer and what I will demonstrate to you today is it will show you the actual image or the actual screen, but it will blur out the information. This to me is much more elegant way. There might be more options that I am not aware of. So let me go and paste in some code for iOS. Now iOS, as I mentioned, it is a little bit more involved. So here what we are doing, we need to tap into a couple of lifecycle events. One is on resign activation. This is the code which will run the moment your application goes into the background. And the other is on activated. And this is the code which is going to execute the moment your application comes back into foreground. Now, it's pretty simple. I know the code seems a bit too much, but let me explain. It's very simple. So all I'm doing, I'm just creating a UI visual effect view, a blur window, setting it to null to start with. And then on the resign activation event, all I'm doing, I'm just creating this blur window. So the way I'm creating this blur window is I'm creating a blur effect, first of all, with the style of dark blur effect style. and then I am creating a blur window with the current bounds of the current frame. So if I go to my iOS application, let me go over here. So these are the full bounds of the current frame. So what I'm doing, I'm creating a new blur window with this blur effect with the whole frame in picture. So I'm saying UI application dot shared application dot key window dot root view controller dot view dot bounds, and I'm applying this blur effect to it, which is the dark blur effect. And then once I have created this blur window, I'm saying that just set the current window to this blur window that we have created. So we are imposing this blur window on top of our current window. So we are adding a sub view on top of our current window. And similarly, when we are reactivating the application, all we are doing is we are just checking if the blur window is not null, that is, it has already been applied. We are removing it from the super view. So earlier we added this sub view, and now we are removing it from the main window, and then we are disposing it. So let us run this and see it in action. So I'm going to just run this on iOS now. So the application is launching. Now, do you see the moment I try to go to the background, let me just put this in the background, and even if I go to the window manager, you see, we see the actual image of our application, but you cannot see any information in it. All the information has been blurred out. This to me is much better way, but the moment you click on it, it comes to the foreground. That is when this second piece of code on activation is going to run, and it is going to remove the blur window or the blur effect from the main window. So this was problem number 1. Now problem number 2 is, let me just go back, and good, we have solved this problem. That is fine. When you are sharing your screen, or maybe you wanted to show some photos to your colleague or your friend, and you were just holding your phone in front of him, and you go to the task manager, excellent, you have hidden the information. But what if, take this example, I leave my phone on the desk. Let's say I'm sitting in a restaurant, or I am, in my workplace, I leave my device unlocked on the desk, and someone just goes, opens this window, and say there is a button over here, this one, which is going to transfer the money to some other account. So someone can simply come over here, click on this button, enter $50,000, enter their bank account information, and boom, money is transferred from my bank account to that person's bank account. So how can we protect this? So the way we can handle this is using fingerprint or Face ID lock, or in simple words, biometric authentication in the application itself. So which means the moment the application comes into the foreground, it will ask you to authenticate using either the fingerprint or your Face ID, depending on what you have available on your device. For this, we are going to make use of fingerprint plugin. So let me actually go and add this fingerprint plugin. So manage NuGet packages. I'm going to search for plugin.fingerprint. So here we have got plugin.fingerprint, which has come up. Now in this particular case, since I'm using .NET MAUI version, I'm going to go to pre-releases, and I'm going to use the version 3 beta 1. So I'm going to add this package to my application. Now for this to work, there are a couple of additional things we need to do. We need to let our Android, okay, so let me accept this. We need to tell both our Android as well as iOS application that we are going to make use of either the fingerprint scanner or the Face ID on the mobile devices. So for this, we will need to go to the platforms. I'm going to go to Android manifest. In fact, let me edit this in code editor, and I'm going to include a new permission, which is use biometrics. So I'm going to just bring it over here. So you can say use permission, and the permission name is android.permissions.use biometrics. You can also do the same if you want. You can go over here, and then in the permissions you can go and find this over here. It's called use biometric. So this is for Android. The same thing you need to do for iOS. For iOS, you will need to go to the info plist and you need to add this over here. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to just switch to, or I'm going to edit this in, let's say, Visual Studio Code, and I'm going to add a couple of lines to this. So at the very end, just before ending of the dictionary, I'm going to add in NS Face ID usage description, and I'm just going to give a description that we need to access the Face ID for authentication. So let me save this, close this. Now if I open my info.plist, you can see it says privacy Face ID usage description. Rather than doing that, you could actually have, just clicked on a new, add new entry, and you could have selected this as well. So this is the setup part. Now an additional thing that you will need to do is on Android, if you go back to our lifecycle events, you need to add this to on create event as well. So you will need to specify that whenever the activity is created on Android, I am going to use cross-platform fingerprint reader, and you are going to set the current activity resolver to the current activity. Now, one of the things, unfortunately, I will not be able to demonstrate it running on Android because at the moment there is a bug in the library and it crashes on Android. So there are a lot of people who have complained about this to the author. Let's hope that the author will fix this very soon. So that's all for the MAUI program for now, but we will demonstrate this for iOS at least. So to do this, what I'm going to do, I'm going to go to my app.xaml, and here I'm going to override on resume. So I'm going to override the on resume function for my application, and what I'm going to do, I'm going to say, let me bring in a bit of code over here first. So we do not need the base.onResume. Instead, I'm going to bring in, so I'm going to say where authentication request is equal to, let me put everything in different lines so we can see it properly. So I'm just creating a new request of type new authentication request configuration, which is coming from fingerprint, plugin.fingerprint, the NuGet package that we just brought in. And we are giving it a header saying, are you authorized? Let me correct the spelling. And then just a friendly message saying that we need to ensure that it is really you before proceeding. And the result, we are going to store it back in our authorization result. So let me just run this code on iOS. We are not doing anything with it yet. So it is saying there is an error because we are using await, so we need to use async. So let me run this. So at the moment, I'm just asking for the permission and storing the result in a variable called auth result. I'm not making use of this result as yet. So let's say the application is running. I go to the background, and now if I either bring it back from my task manager or by clicking the application, you see the information in the background is blurred and it is giving us a message, do you want to allow this application to use the Face ID? And this is the description that we gave in the info.plist, need access to Face ID for authentication. And if we say don't allow, then it will not allow us. So if I say okay, now it is waiting for my face to be authenticated. Now since we are running it in Android, what we can do is, let me put in iOS, I'm going to put a breakpoint over here, and I'm going to go to Face ID and I'm going to return it matching face. So see what happens when I say matching face. The auth result comes back as authenticated as true, right? Let me just run this again. This time I'm going to give it a wrong face, and then we are going to get back false. So let me close this application, not close this. This time I'm going to launch it from the home screen itself, and I go to face ID and I'm going to say non-matching face, and it says face not recognized. You can try again. If I say try again, it will keep on trying until the time you say cancel. This time around it is going to come back with authenticated as false. Now since we have this result, we can do something with it. So what do we want to do? For this we are going to say if it is not authenticated, so if saying auth request result dot authenticated, sorry, auth result. So if we are not authenticated, we are going to do something else. If we are authenticated, we are going to do something else. So what are we going to do if we are not authenticated? For this, I'm going to use a bit of a trick over here. Let me show that to you, and I will explain what does that mean. So I'm going to create a private variable over here where I'm going to save the current page the user is on. At this stage or at this moment, you can see we only have one page, which is the main page. But imagine you have 10 different pages in your application, and depending on where the user is coming back to, you want to make sure that you are using that particular, or you are showing that particular screen to the user and not anything else. You do not take the user back to the very first screen. So at the moment, I'm just setting the current user page as null. And what I'm going to do is, before I start, I'm going to set the before that over here, what I'm going to do, I'm going to check if my main page is not any of these two pages where I need authentication or not authorized page, then I save the user page into this variable, which is my current main page. In my case, it is only one page. And then I set my main page to need authentication page. So you saw, at least it showed you that blurred image. What if we do not want to show that? We want to show another custom page. So I'm setting the main page to need authentication page, and then I'm going to request for authentication. And if we are authenticated, very simple, we can say set the main page back to the user page. Simple as that. So we are setting the main page back to user page if we are authenticated. If we are not authenticated, then maybe we can display a message and we can display something else on the screen. So we can display a message saying you are an imposter. Sorry, I'm not going to let you see this page or this application. And then I will redirect to a not authorized page. Now, another thing that I will do, being a good citizen, I will be wrapping up all of this into a try catch. Assuming something goes wrong, if the user does not have access to, let's say, the fingerprint scanner, or you saw when it was asking for permissions, you denied this, we can capture that over here. So I'm just going to move this whole code inside of the try catch block. Same thing I'm doing, nothing fancy. So let me just run this application once again now and see this in action. So coming back to this, the first thing when we try to come back, let me go back. So we are over here. Let me run the application again. The first thing it is going to check if my main page is need authentication or not authorized, which is not the case at the moment. That main page is the main bank balance page. So it is going to save that page into this user variable. And then it is going to set the main page to need authentication. So let me run the application now. Let me hide this. Something has gone wrong. Now it is giving me an error. Oh, I think I have duplicated this code. Yeah, this is a bug that I have seen recently. The moment I debug and continue, it copy pastes the whole thing again and again. This is some issue with Visual Studio for Mac. So let me remove this and let me run this again. So the application is running. Let me go back to the background and then open the app. So at this stage, you see this is another page that we are showing, which is the NET authentication page. Unfortunately, what we have written over here is not very visible because we have already applied the blur effect. And now it is waiting for Face ID. So let me say feature Face ID dot not matching. So the moment we say not matching, you see it shows us this message saying you are an imposter and you want to see my balance. And this is the page that we are seeing. I am not showing you my balance. Let me do something. Let me go back. Let me open this app once again. Now, in this case, assuming if we had said Face ID, I am matching the face, ideally, it would have taken us back to that page because we had set the main page last time to this NET authentication. But this is the trick that I'm doing over here. I'm storing that page into that local user page variable, and so that even after the retry, when I come back, it always takes me to the last known good page, not any of these two pages. So these are the simple two pages that I created with some simple text in it, and that's it. So let me run the application again just to demonstrate to you. So the application is running. I can try to launch it from here, and the moment I do, you see now it is saying we need to authenticate you first, and it's asking us to match the face. Let's say if I say matching face, it shows me the correct page. If I go back, maybe try to launch it again, it asks to authenticate. I'm saying I'm not matched, cancel. It shows me a message. Again, the message showing is up to you. You can simply show another nicely formatted page that you are not allowed to see this. And if I go back, click on this again, it will ask us to match the face. If we match, boom, we are in. So that's it for now. So I hope you understood the concept, and it will be easier for you to now incorporate fingerprint plugin scanner as well as blurring or hiding the information in the background Windows Task Manager. If you like this video, please consider subscribing to this channel for more videos coming up. Have a good day.